hear me if I'm out here?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to take this off, by the way, so if that's all right, we'll get a little comfortable here. Well, yeah, I want to first of all thank Chris for asking me, and he didn't have to beg me. I mean, we've all been in situations where we've had people give back and give presentations, so I'm thrilled to be here today. Now, I was doing fine until I walked in the room and I saw some familiar faces in here, some mentors of mine, so people who helped mold and shape me. So, like I said, thanks for being here for those of you who made the trip. I know you had other things you could be doing, so thank you. So anyway, so today's talk is going to be basically all about faith, focus, and follow-through, how to build and maintain a values-based practice. And I think to get started, I should probably just start out by just giving you a background in terms of who Matt Crothers was before I came into the business. Okay, so I had a pretty impressive resume when it came across the recruiter's desk, because my resume said that from the age of 9 to the age of 19, I picked green beans at a roadside market. Okay. So I'm sure for those of you who are in recruiting, you'd probably get a resume like that and it'd probably quickly go in the trash. But so that was my background coming into this business, and I was only the third person in the family on both sides of the tree to go off to college. I went to Ball State University, and when I went to college, my brother had said, you know what? Before you get out of college, do an internship. Do an internship. You need to get that experience. So I remember sitting in one of my marketing classes. It was a Friday morning, an 8 o'clock on a Friday morning class in college, which for those of you who can remember back to those college days, that's kind of a rough class to get to. But I remember sitting in the class, a gentleman came to speak, a guy by the name of Richard Douglas up in Muncie, Indiana. I vaguely remember what he talked about, but not a lot. We all took a test, and of course I got the letter later saying, hey, you scored great, would you want to talk about an internship? So I remember that the gentleman's name was Mr. Douglas, but I couldn't find my notes. I couldn't find the letter which said which company it was. But I remember my brother said do an internship, and this was an internship opportunity. So I got out the phone book, and I remember it was Northwest something. So I got the phone book, I'm looking down through, and I came to the first one that says Northwest Trucking. And so I called it up and I asked for a Mr. Douglas, and they're like, there's not a Mr. Douglas here. I'm like, well, okay, check that one off. It must not have been that company. And then lo and behold, I got to Northwestern Mutual, and there was a Mr. Douglas there. So why do I tell you these stories? Well, the reason I tell you these stories is because I didn't come in this business with this long pedigree of business owners or doctors, and I didn't belong to a country club. No one in my family belonged to a country club. I didn't grow up saying, man, this is what I want to do for a living. I mean, it was just divine intervention that said, hey, you need to be here, and that's where I ended up. So for any of you who are fairly new in the business, in fact, is there anybody here who's maybe under 5 years? Okay, 3 of you. So if you're sitting there right now going, I don't have a background, I don't have this long pedigree, I don't have this natural market, that was me back in 1990, and here we are today, right? So what I want to do for that group is I'm going to share with you some insight in terms of what I was thinking back then. For the veterans in the room, I'm going to hopefully inspire you to get rejuvenated about some things that maybe we lost sight of as we grew in our practice. And hopefully, like I say, you'll walk away with at least one idea today. So let's go ahead and dive in here. First thing, when I talk about faith, what I mean there is, what is your why? In other words, why are you in this business? We could be doing all kinds of things, right? And we could be doing things that probably would pay us fairly comparable and not as much stress as what this business brings on. So why this business? Okay? And really, what is your vision of where you see yourself as time goes on? Okay? So that's what I mean by the why. On the faith. On the focus, what I'll talk about there is, what are you going to do? What are your goals? Now that you have this vision as far as where you see yourself and why you're in the business, now what are your goals that you're going to lay out? And then finally, on follow-through. Follow-through is really where the rubber hits the road, and that is, what are you going to do today, not tomorrow, but what are you going to do today to start that journey? And how are you going to create an environment to hold you accountable to that? okay? If you think about it, as we go out and build our practices, this is really what we're doing with our clients as well. The faith part is when we get in front of a prospect, we do what? We do a fact finder, right? We gather information because we want to know what? We want to know their vision for their future, where they see themselves going, correct? And then we get laser focused and say, okay, what are some of the goals we need to accomplish in order to get you there, right? And then the follow through for us with prospects is, are we just going to talk about the plan, or are we going to do something about it? You know, are they going to move forward with the investment recommendation? Are they going to go ahead and purchase the insurance? That's the real tell to tape in terms of how serious they are about their goal and also their vision. So we do this every day, right? I just think we need to work on our business more instead of in our business. And so if you're coming here today for sales ideas, maybe we can talk afterwards about some of those things, but today is just more working on your business, which I think we need to all spend more time doing that because we get caught up in the day-to-day. So is that fair enough? Okay. So let's break down this whole topic of faith. What is your purpose? What is your vision? What is your why? There was an author many years ago, he's since passed away, Stephen Covey. I see a lot of heads shaking there. Stephen Covey had the famous saying, you know, begin with the end in mind, right? So powerful. I know I was at a conference one time, an industry conference, and a gentleman had a quote, and I'm just going to read this quote to you because it really hit home for me. He had a comment that says, before a person can achieve the kind of life he or she wants, you must become that kind of individual. You must think, act, talk, walk, and conduct yourself in all of your affairs as would the person you wish to become. As to the person you wish to become. So, once again, that's just making sure that you have clarity on, you know, who you want to be as time goes on. Probably my own personal favorite role model in this area of having a vision and staying consistent with it is Noah. If anybody has read the Bible, there's a character in there called Noah, and Noah had this instruction that came from God, which said, "Hey, you know what? I want you to build this boat, and it's going to be a big boat, right?" And at the time, Noah's just like, "Boy, I don't know. And the reason he was doubting this is because a couple things. One, Noah was 600 years old when he was approached to build this boat, right? Another thing is that when he was approached to build this boat, Noah had spent his entire life living in a desert. So he didn't have the craftsmanship skills of a sailor. He wasn't even a carpenter. He couldn't find anybody to help him build this massive boat. And it ended up taking him over 120 years to build it. Not about you, but when I got a project on my to-do list, if it takes me over a couple hours, I start getting a little frustrated, and it took Noah 120 years to build this boat. So why would someone stay so focused on something like that? Well, there clearly was a vision that he had from the instructions he was given that said, you need to build this. And he was all in, and ultimately ended up doing that. So I think in our world, I'm not a big technology guy, so let's see if I can do this here. And I just have one slide, so I won't screw that up. So our team has our own vision or purpose statement, and that is the Mac Produce team exists to uplift and serve others by managing their financial dreams and harvesting peace of mind. That's my vision statement. That's my team's vision statement because we co-created this. So for those of you who've been in the business for a while, it's one thing for you to come in and say, well, here's our goals for this year, and here's what we're going to build. And that's kind of, I think, the old way of doing it was when it was you and maybe a couple support people. But this business is complex. Hopefully you've built out some teams or some strategic alliances with other people who have teams. But in our world, we sat down as a team and said, why do we do what we do? And so I went around my team and said, why do you work here? Why don't you work there? What do you enjoy about this career? Right? And so through that, we collectively came up with this. So now there's buy-in that we believe that's why we exist. Now, after you come up with a purpose statement or a vision statement, I think you then need to go public with it. Now, when I say go public, in our world, if you look at any marketing materials that go out, if you look at our email signature, anything that a person's going to see about the Matt Carruthers team, that's on there. It is splattered everywhere. Okay? It helps hold us accountable to what we say we're going to do, because we're going to have certain days where we're just not going to be on our game, and we want to make sure that's always out there. So, just as a show of hands, has anybody worked intentionally on a why statement or a purpose statement or a vision statement? Okay. It's not everybody, but a lot of you have, right? And it looks like those who maybe have been in the business for a while have done that, which is good. All right. So let me just walk through for those who are newer in the business. Because it's one thing to be standing up here in the year 2016, 25 years in the business talking about things, but let's go back to the first year, the first year in the business. So coming off the campus at Ball State University, and you start doing the work, I can tell you this was not my why, right? My why back then was, I just want to survive. Insecure, very insecure, scared to death, right? And probably a strong desire to prove to my parents that I could make it, right? You think of the dynamics of, only the third one going off to college, so that's, when your family's that wired that way, oh yeah, you're the college one, and then now you're going to go into insurance, and the stigmatism that comes with that. So it's kind of like that was the drive. I want to prove that I can make it, right? And so if that is your drive early on, that's okay. It won't be healthy if that's your drive for your whole career. But I think in the short term, just until you can make it, that might be your why. But that was my why. That was my why. As time went on, a couple years later, if I then were to go back and look at my why, it became more about lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle did I want to live? And what type of vacations did I want to go on? And I wanted to get out of my parents' house, right? So getting my own house was a big why. That got me up making those calls like I needed to make. So that changed. And then here we are 25 years later, and now it's this. Do I still do what I do because I like the lifestyle? Well, sure. And is it because of the vacations we get to do with family and loved ones? Sure. But that's a byproduct of this, right? It's a byproduct of this, and I'll get into that in more detail later. I view this, for those who are veterans in the group, I view this as my calling, as our team's calling. It's about higher purpose, and it's more of a servant leadership mentality. That's something that's big to me and my team, is we like to be more servant leaders. And I think about this business, and I applaud all of you for being here, by the way, because there's a lot of competition for your time. I know you have colleagues who chose not to come here today, and that's fine. Maybe they saw who the speaker was. But I think one of the things that continues to drive me today is when you look at the anxiety and the struggles that people have in our society today, a big part of that has to do around finances. In fact, the divorce rate in the United States, when you look at any study that talks about the divorce rate in the United States, the overwhelming majority of those studies say that the number one reason for divorce in America is around what topic? Finances, money. Yeah. What do we do every day? What do we do every day? We help people in these areas. So think about that. The number one thing that's ripping families apart and impacting not only the marriages but the kids, and I'm a product of parents who divorced at a time where it wasn't the greatest time for them to be doing that. Never is. And I look at that, I think, man, what a calling we have. Bless you. To know that if we're doing our job and our calling properly, we may be saving a marriage. We may be saving a marriage and not even realize it. We may be making spouses better spouses. We may be making parents better parents. We may be making bosses better bosses, right? So if you're ever having a bad day, just realize that you might have been called in this business to help save maybe just one marriage, right? And you may never know that that's what you ended up doing for them. And if you can get to that spot, and I hope you can all get to, if you can get to that spot, then even though there's challenges and even though there's things in our career that might make us wonder, boy, am I doing the right thing? Should I be here? It could just be one person that you're helping out, one family. Okay. Also, when you're 25 years in the business, you need some cheaters so that you can actually read your writing on your notepad. So
Understand.
bear with me. Oh, there we go. Okay. Any questions so far, by the way? Yes, no? So once you figure out your why, just realize there are things that are going to occur in life that's going to change your why. And as I just reflect back, and I'm just doing this because you can relate to this in case you wonder, what changed in my life, in your particular life? I mean, it could have been the fact that, maybe when you got into business, I got into business, I was single, and obviously when I got married, my perspective changed a little bit. I'm the proud father of 3 girls, so that changes your perspective quickly. I'll never forget getting a phone call from a cousin of mine, and her brother was a client of mine, my cousin as well, and he was in the hospital dealing with a major health issue that crept up on him. He was self-employed. And I'll never forget that she called up and said, hey, did you know so-and-so's in the hospital? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. And they said, hey, we don't know what the prognosis is going to look like. They said, is he going to start getting a check since he can't work? And I just remember, I was only like a year in the business, I just remember just getting this terrible feeling because I'm sitting there going, he bought a life insurance policy, and you know what? I don't even think I talked to him about disability insurance. Sold the policy, excited, moved on. Didn't talk, I went back to the notes, I didn't even talk to him about disability insurance. Now, fortunately, he did recover, but the family was concerned that he might lose his business, right? How would have I felt if that would have played out the way that it could have played out? It would have been awful. I'll never forget that phone call, never forget it. Started writing a lot of disability insurance after that, right? And how many here have had a death claim? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm preaching the choir here. You know that feeling when you got that phone call, right? And you had I don't know about you, I had mixed emotions. It was like tragedy, but then also this certain thing started coming up of being proud of what we did. Because you know that when you were with that family, you were the one who probably, outside maybe their minister, that had the most impact on their life at that moment. So that changes our perspective as we go along as well. So where I'm going with this is that it's not about qualifying for MDRT, that's great. It's not about qualifying for quarter of the table or top of the table. Those are all things you pick up along your journey, but the most important thing is be very well connected with your purpose and your vision, because that's going to drive everything else. So, questions or comments on that? We okay? I don't see anybody nodding off, so all right. Coffee's kicking in, right? Let's talk about focus, and I want you to write this down, because my mentor shared this with me early on in the business, and it still applies today. So despite all the change that have occurred in our industry, this is still the gospel. It is true, and it's this. And this is going to spell out like it's a math equation, right? So to be successful in our business, so success in our business equals, so success in the business equals, and let me give this formula. It's activity, so write down activity, then put the math symbol times, skill, so skill, times economic potential, times leverage. Okay, so just to make sure, the equation is success in this business equals activity times skill times economic potential times leverage. Got it? Because we're going to spend the next few minutes on this. Let's talk about activity. For the newer ones in the activity is about the only thing you actually have any control over. Right? You know, when I first came to business and they said, you know, see so many people, that's the only thing I can control, because as a green bean picker, I didn't know anything about financial services, right? So they just said go work. Well, I knew how to do that. So you just get out and work hard. Has anyone heard of Al Granum? Show of hands. What's Al Granum known for? The one card system. How many people grew up on the one card system? Yeah. I can tell you, if you haven't read the book, go read it, because he talks about, they studied it for I forget how many years, and the numbers shook out that in order to obtain one client, you needed to do 3 in-depth interviews. And in order to get to those 3 in-depth interviews, you had to start out with 10 qualified suspects. So if you gave me 10 great referrals, if I was new in the business and I ended up today getting over lunch meeting 10 great referrals, how's that feel? Yeah, here we go. You're probably going to end up with about 6 appointments. 4 will say thanks but no thanks. 3 will give you their life story and say, yeah, let's look at doing something. And then one will follow through. So once I realized that it's 10-3-1, that woke me up to say, you better have a lot of referrals or leads coming in, because if you want to grow this business and be in it for the rest of your life, you're going to have to be out there prospecting a lot. And this is a prospecting business. And what I'd say is that if you're running high activity for the newer ones in the room, it makes it a lot easier for your mentors to then coach you on things that maybe you need to work on in terms of your skill set. Case in point, if Mr. Diltz back there said, hey, you know what, Matt, I hear that you're good at giving people instruction on how to hit a baseball. I'm struggling. Can you help me out? If Brent just walked up and got in the batting cage and they threw one pitch and I saw him swing, could I really advise him on what he's doing right or wrong? No. I'd want to see maybe 100 pitches come in. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, why don't you try this, try that. So if you're sitting there struggling in the business, all I can say is if you're not working really hard, seeing a lot of people, it's going to be hard for someone to really try and come in and say, hey, are you trying this or are you trying that, right? So I think you definitely need to make sure you're keeping track of your activity. So early on in the business, my mentor said, you know what, talk to 10 new people every day on the phone. 10. And I had a sheet that had 1 through 10, and I'd write the name in there. Did that for probably the first 3 years in the business. Right? 10 new people every day, not occasionally, every day. Really made me bulletproof, I think, because I ran high activity. I was told early on, keep 50 appointments a month. Keep 50 appointments a month. And it was an insurance-based practice only at the time. Do 100 insurance applications. Now, I wasn't PNC, so this is life, disability, annuities. Do 100. And I was told if you keep 50 and do 100, you'll pretty much be recession-proof. Right? Now, I didn't know any difference, so that's what I did, and I think that's probably why I'm here today talking on this topic. So, if you're new in the business, you have to run high activity, period. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but I don't find many successful people who didn't run high activity. Does that make sense? Is there any veteran that disagrees with that? High activity, okay. That's a good thing. So, today, here we are, 25 years later. For me, it's real simple. There are 17 appointment slots that I choose to see clients, and that's it. I love this business. I love my family more. I love my church more. There's other things I want to do, but I will devote 17 appointment slots a week for client-facing meetings. That's what we'll do. Come Monday morning, I'm grumpy if there's not 17 appointments on the calendar. If there are, I'm not grumpy. It's that simple. This business is so complex. Break it down to something really simple. For me, 17 appointments. It's going to work out. It's going to work out. So, who was Henry Ford? Who's Henry Ford? What was he known for?
Production line.
Assembly line.
Cars
right?
that only come in black.
Cars that only come in black. There you go. Who was Ray Kroc?
McDonald's.
McDonald's. Now, Ray Kroc and Henry Ford are known for the same thing.
Setting up process.
Mass production. Right? Because let's face it, McDonald's food probably isn't defined as being like top-notch food, but why do we go there? Cheap, fast, consistent. Go to McDonald's in California, go to McDonald's in Minnesota, go to one in Florida. You know what you're getting, right? Our business, get the system, get the assembly line going. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be a robot and you're not going to have compassion and empathy when you're in a meeting. You need to bring that to the meeting, but create your system like Ray Kroc did and like Henry Ford, and the rest will take care of itself, okay? We're here in Indianapolis, and I'll never forget, I'm a big sports buff here. Some of you might remember Reggie Miller. Everybody remember Reggie? Who misses Reggie, by the way? Yeah. What was Reggie known for?
3-point shot.
Hitting Spike Lee's face?
Yeah, exactly. So 3-pointers, but let's take a step further. Good at 3-pointers, but what was he really known for?
Clutch time.
Clutch time. Clutch time. That's why I missed about Reggie. Did anyone ever go to a Pacer game when Reggie played? Right? Do you know what his routine was before every game? Anybody?
You wait for the buzzer to go off in practice to get ready to shoot right before it went off.
Yeah, everyone catch that? So whenever Reggie would get ready for a game, he'd be sitting there, and as the clock's winding down before the opening buzzer goes off, it's going down, he would find a ball, he'd go to the top of the key, the 3-point line, and the basket would be behind him, and he's looking that way at the clock, and he'd just dribble there in 5, 4, 3, 2, and then in one motion he would turn and shoot as the buzzer would go off, and he normally would make it, and he did that before every game. Repetition, 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 repetition. What's he known for? Being one of the greatest clutch shooters. So, what was Reggie doing? He was watching that clock, because when it came game time, he wanted to be so used to that feeling of watching that clock going 5, 4. He didn't need his hands to be sweaty, right? He knew that he could turn in so much time and shoot. He visualized the shot going in as the buzzer's going off in his ear. He just got so used to that, right? And that's why he was so great. In our business, we need to be repetition, 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 and it'll become second nature to us, right? And it will build the second part of what we have in that formula, which is what? Skill. It's about repetition. It's about joint work. If you're a new rep, do joint work. I don't care if you have to split the project. Do joint work. It's the cheapest education you're going to get, all right? You got to have an abundance mentality. There's too many people out there who need our help, right? We're not fighting against each other for clients. That happens occasionally. But there's so many people out there. We need to serve the people. Get an abundance mentality. It's okay to split a case. Get out and do joint work. Get your designations. Get your designations. I love how, I guess it was on the previous slide, and since I'm not good at that, I'm not going to try and go back. But get your designations. I think it's critically important. The public will see that. Someone asked me one time, do you think you've grown your practice because you have the designations? I always say, well, I don't know, but I don't think I've lost business because I have them, right? Get your designations. And when you get your designations, just don't blow through the material to take the test and pass and get it. You actually can learn through the materials when you go through those courses. So don't just blow through them, learn. There's good materials in there, okay? Other ways to build your skill. Go to NAFA meetings. I mean, you're here today and hopefully pick up on one idea. Go to MDRT meetings. I've been to scores of them. Heard some phenomenal speakers, even from other countries. When you hear a presentation, if there's an audio or a DVD, you can pick up on that. Get that and put it in your car. You know, when you drive around your car, do you listen to talk radio? Or you listen to a DVD on some great speaker you heard a couple years ago that really inspired you? What are you putting in your head? I don't want to hear about what's going on in politics during the course of the day when I need to be laser focused on Joe because he's my next client. I need to be thinking of Joe and what I'm going to do to uplift Joe and get him to take action on something he really doesn't want to do. If I'm listening to junk on the radio, that's just going to distract me from focusing on Joe, right? So let's stop winging it for you veterans. Stop winging it, okay? Next part of the equation, economic potential. That's all about what's the capacity of the person you're sitting down with in terms of the type of business they can do with you. Early on in the business, for all the new ones again, people who are new in the business, you tend to do work with people who are maybe 5 years north or south of your age. So I know when I came to the business at the age of 21, you know, I'm calling on people from 21 to 26. I'm not calling on 16-year-olds, right? A little creepy. But I quickly found out that they didn't have any, they had something in common. That was what?
Broke.
They're broke, right? Now, still serve them, still help them out, but maybe you don't spend 3 or 4 meetings trying to get them on board. Still do a good job, but quickly find out for the newer ones. Find out what places pay people fairly well that are in and around your age group, and then figure out a way to get in there. And I think everyone, veterans as well, have at least 3 to 5 nest. What do I mean by nest? Any guess? What do you mean when I say you need to have 3 to 5 nests? Yes. Correct. So if I'm in Indianapolis and I thought, well, where's a place where people get paid pretty well, and there's a lot of them, I might think of Eli Lilly. So I might make that one of my nest. And I might come over here to another company and say, you know what, maybe IU Health, so maybe I'll go here and make that one of my nests. I think you ought to have 3 to 5 nests at all time because, you know, business cycles can impact some of those industries, right? And so you don't want to just be solely in that industry, in my opinion, because then you can wake up someday going, man, no one wants to talk to me because of all the changes going on in that industry. But when you get in there and you make a nest, you quickly need to learn their benefit package, and all of a sudden you start becoming the expert, and they'll tell their coworkers about you. Okay? So I think you definitely need the nest. And as time goes on, you'll start figuring out where your passions are, the people you really like working with. For me, I'll just share with you mine, and we'll move on. Our world, our ideal prospect is somebody who runs a business. My world is usually a blue-collar business. Being a green bean picker, I can relate to that group a little better. People who are in a tax-sensitive situation, which means you're probably $250 and up in household income, and if they're over the age of 50, they usually have at least $500,000 of investable assets. Now, I know that's our target, so does our team. So do our top clients. We tell them that's what we're proactively looking for. We won't turn anybody down. A single mom who's just trying to figure out how to balance a checkbook is going to get on my calendar. And I'm going to give it my all in that meeting, right? But we proactively look for those people who have the economic potential to drive our business, since I'm only going to allow 17 appointment slots because I want to have a life outside of this business. Does that make sense? Yes, no? Okay. Last part of the formula is what? Leverage, technology and people. Technology and people. Great mentors always said that the moment you think you need to hire someone, it's too late. You should have already done it. I know my expense ratio for my entire practice ranges between 30 to 50% of gross. You know, and some of you might be sitting there going, wow, that's high. Well, you know what? There's a lot of that wrapped up in people power, right? Technology. I mean, granted, we have the iPad, but we also use Apple TV, right? It's not that hard. You do this clicker, and I got Apple TV up, and people come in and say, "Whoa, that's cool." Well, if they only knew I really had a team that had to teach me how to use it. Social media, you better be using that. And when you hire smart people. Hire smart people, and then get out of the way. Get out of the way. When we hire people on our team, I tell them, bless you, I tell them, we're bringing on this team, and in short order, you're going to be telling me what to do. We're no longer in the age of hire an assistant and then you just feed them stuff. Because then guess what? When you get busy, they're sitting there on the sideline saying, what do you want me to do? They're waiting for instructions. They're waiting for commands. This business is too busy. We need people who can think on their feet, right? And it's shame on us that we brought people on the team who weren't wired that way. And that's not that they're bad people. It's just not how they're wired, right? So hire really smart people, get out of the way, and let them do their job. Also, hire people who care. We're going to talk about that later, I think, when we do this panel talk, but hire people who care and then pay them really well. So, any questions on the formula for success? Go right ahead.
Matt, this is a comment rather than a question. When you were talking about activity, and then when you went into your skills, the great Ben Feldman had a quote that I absolutely love. He says, if you deal with the masses, you'll eat with the classes.
Oh, that's great.
You take care of enough people, that body will absolutely take care of you to put you in the lifestyle you want. But if you put your lifestyle ahead of the people, you'll never get there.
That's great. That's great. Everyone hear that? And by the way, Ben Feldman, I know if you started reading his materials, you might think, oh, this is kind of old school material, but his stuff is priceless even today.
Yeah.
It really is.
I love the one, I saw a whole video with him, and where a guy said, this was a live video, and the guy said, Ben, I'm really sorry, but I can't do this. And he goes, I will not accept your apology. The guy was kind of taken aback. He goes, you need to go in the other room and apologize to your family why you're not being the financial steward to take care of them. You're not doing anything in my favor.
Yep. Well, and what a healthy spot to get to where you realize that we're in this business for others, not ourselves.
Yeah.
But boy, we all have days I think we kind of maybe we're thinking of ourselves too much, right? We all get to those points. So, but great comment. By the way, Chris, you said 50 minutes. I know we started a little bit late, so you got 10 minutes or so. Okay. So follow through. Follow through is all about tracking. You should be posting your activity every day. Al Granum talks about in the one card system. I posted my activity from the very first day I was in the business, and I posted my activity last night. I still post my activity. How many people did I see? What kind of meeting was it? I post it every day. The reason I do that is the same reason a lot of you have these little Fitbits things on, right? Why do you have these Fitbits on?
Track activity.
Track activity, right? And why aren't we tracking our activity? The reason the Fitbit is so popular is because if you want to lose weight, you may have made phenomenal choices today, but in the morning, in terms of your life, how you exercise and how you what foods you were eating or not eating, tomorrow morning when you get out of the shower and look in the mirror, you look the same as you did the day before. So was yesterday a good day or a bad day? It was a great day. Why? Because you tracked it. It's not about did you write business today. Oh, it feels nice if you get out of the shower and you think, hey, you're looking pretty good, right? But if you write a nice case, hey, it feels good. Great. But it could have been a terrible day in terms of building your practice because if you didn't do and see the amount of people you needed to see, if I have one appointment instead of 17, but the person buys something really big, was that a good week or a bad week? It's a terrible week. So it's going to catch up eventually, right? All right. Your environment. Think about your environment. I mentioned what you listened to earlier. It helps your chances of being able to get and do your follow-through, your action steps. It's why people have personal trainers. It's why we have accountability groups. I'm just going to run through some things that have been important to me in terms of creating an environment. I have a monthly client builder group. Get together once a month, every month, for 25 years. And all we talk about is, did you do your activity last month? And as veterans, you probably were in something like that at one point in time, and you're like, I've heard this a million times. 25 years later, still doing it. I have a national study group. Folks from all around the country, we get together twice a year, same conversation. What's going well? Where are some of your blind spots? What can I help you out with? Who's ever hired a coach? Right? If you've never hired a coach, hire a coach. They're great. They're great. A lot of what I'm talking about today is because of coaches that I've hired through the years. A board of advisors. For you veteran reps, you are sitting on a gold mine of knowledge of people who will help you grow your business and also will probably be able to send you introductions that you can't even fathom are out there. I have a board of advisors. I've had it for about 15 years. We get together twice a year. It's a 2-hour meeting. They don't get paid. And they almost always show up for the meeting because they walk away from the meeting with a lot of great ideas for themselves because we talk about life, we talk about balance, we talk about how do you go your practice without burning out. veterans, if you don't have a board advisor, see me later, because it was a game changer for me when we started that. If you have a hard time getting up in the morning, here's a real easy one. Put the alarm clock on the other side of the room. Right? And I can tell you, if you're married and you have a little one and you do that, you better get up when it goes off, or your family's going to be pretty upset if you wake up the little one. We hear about red letter language, your phoning script, what you're going to say in approach. How many people actually write that language out and laminate it and carry it with you? Just a couple hands. Okay, so let me give you an example. A couple years ago, watching the Super Bowl, the Evil Empire was in that game, and I think you all know who that is. And as the quarterback of the Evil Empire was coming up there towards the end of the game at a clutch moment, they have that camera that kind of shows down into the huddle. And I'll never forget this, because in the heat of the moment, come down to the end of the game, and when he walks in the huddle, he gets in the huddle and he goes like this. And he's pointing at his wrist. Now, what's he doing?
Has that quarterback wristband that has all the plays on it.
Yeah, and you look at Andrew Luck, they have these cheat sheets. And let's think about this, folks, and let's acknowledge it's Tom Brady, right? Probably now don't throw stuff at me, probably going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game, right? Has a cheat sheet. I know there's a joke in there because they're cheaters. Yeah. Good profile, yeah. So think about that, though. The top of their profession, one of the greatest ever, using a cheat sheet. Why? Why does he use a cheat sheet? Why do most of the elite quarterbacks use a cheat sheet?
Keep you on track.
Keeps you on track. Point of reference.
Because in the heat of the moment, we lose track of the details. So if you're sitting there saying, oh, Matt, that's hokey, I know what to say. I'm just saying, look at other professions. They have cheat sheets. I still today have my language. If I'm going into a big appointment, I'll get out and, here's my talking points that I'm going to cover. Right? Laugh all day, but it works. I take my staff. Our whole team goes off every quarter. We do quarterly retreats, shut the whole office down, go off into a cabin, just talk about what's going well, things we need to work on. I don't read my mail during the week. I read it on the weekends because it distracts from the 17 people I need to be focused on. We have a marketing calendar. You control your environment. Since we are in Indiana, I am going to read this piece from the book Wooden. Everybody knows who John Wooden is? What's he known for?
Winning a lot of championships at UCLA.
A lot of championships. Has anyone read this book? Called Wooden. The question is asked, Mr. Wooden, how can I become an optimist? Now think of that question. How can I become an optimist? And listen to this answer. Proper preparation and attention to detail. It's almost like, did he not hear the question? How can I become an optimist? Here's what he says, so bear with me here. This is so profound. I believe in the basics, the attention to and the perfection of tiny details that might commonly be overlooked. They may seem trivial, perhaps even laughable to those who don't understand, but they aren't. They are fundamental to your progress in basketball, in business, and in life. They are the difference between champions and near champions. For example, at the first squad meeting each season held 2 weeks before our first actual practice, I personally demonstrate how I want players to put on their socks each and every time. Carefully roll the socks down over the toes, ball of the foot, arch around the heel, then pull the sock up snug so there will be no wrinkles of any kind. I would then have the players carefully check with their fingers for any folds or creases in their socks, starting at the toes, sliding the hand along the side, under the foot, smoothing the sock out as the fingers pass over it. I paid special attention to the heel because that is where wrinkles are most likely. I would watch as the players smooth the sock and along the back of the heel. I wanted it done conscientiously, not quickly or casually. I wanted absolutely no folds, wrinkles, or creases of any kinds on the sock. Then we would proceed to the other foot and do the same thing. I would demonstrate for the players and then have the players demonstrate for me. This may seem like a nuisance, trivial, but I had a very practical reason for being meticulous about this. Wrinkles, folds, creases can cause blisters. Blisters interfere with performance because during practices and games, since there was a way to reduce blisters, something the players and I could control, it was our responsibility to do it. Otherwise, we would not be doing everything possible to prepare in the best way. One of the greatest coaches of all time spends time with high-powered athletes talking about how you wear socks. Crazy?
Not really.
Visuals. I think it's important to have visuals. I actually have a sample here. I have a sheet which has all the things that are meaningful to me in my life broken down in different categories. The major categories are spiritual, family, physical, professional, financial, and education. And I'll just hold up. It wouldn't show up very well up here. I have pictures on here of my family, me and my girls, a picture of our church, a picture of one of my earliest death claims, just all kinds of things on here. And the title says faith, focus, and follow through, right? And what are the action steps I need to be doing in each one of those segments to become a better person in that area? And so this is something that goes in my briefcase. It's there. I see it all the time. So it's just another visual reminder of what's truly important. Pictures in the office. I want clients to come to the office because I have pictures of the family on the wall. I have pictures of friends up. In my desk drawer, when you pull it out, there's pictures of, I have a little folder in there which has pictures of people who have passed away that are clients, because I want to be reminded during those tough days why we do what we do. If anyone's going to the sales conference up in, I think, Syracuse, there's a guy by the name of Roger Sipe who's speaking. He's phenomenal. Go to the session. He really talks about training your brain for things like this. Rethinking motivation. There was a defining moment in my world a few years ago when I read the book Failing Forward. Has anyone read that book, Failing Forward? We do have one written by John Maxwell. I'll never forget John Maxwell in his book, and I'll bring that up as well. He had in his book, he says, several years ago I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room and I came across a paragraph in a medical magazine that describes the battle to act. We hear almost every day, sigh, sigh, sigh. I can't get myself motivated to lose weight, test my blood sugar, so on and so forth. As we hear an equal number of sighs from diabetes educators who can't get their patients motivated to do the right thing for their diabetes or health. We have news for you. Motivation is not going to strike you like lightning. And motivation is not something that someone else, a doctor, a nurse, or family member can bestow or force on you. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. Forget motivation. Just do it. Exercise, lose weight, test your blood sugar, whatever. Do it without motivation, then guess what happens? After you start doing the thing, that's when motivation comes and makes it easy for you to keep doing it. 4 minutes and we'll be done here. I think where all this ends up, everything we talked about today, is it's about what I call purpose-driven activity. You know, the first thing you have to do is connect with your vision, your why, your faith as far as what you're doing, and then know that the rest will come. And what I think is interesting is when you look around this room, there's a lot of successful people in here, and what I find interesting is that some of you are probably highly technical, like scary smart, when it comes to numbers and things like that. There's some of you who probably aren't in that category. I won't point or look at anybody in particular on this side of the room. Some people say that being bigger is better. Some people say being smaller is better. Some people say that hire a phoner. Some people say don't hire a phoner, make your own calls. Some people say only buy term life insurance. Some people say only buy permanent insurance. Some people say annuities are great. Some people can't stand annuities. And I heard a phrase a long time ago which said, be a first-rate version. Be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of somebody else. Right? Be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of somebody else. So if there's things today you say, hey, that was really helpful, just take that and figure out how that applies to you. Don't try and be robotic and just copy what somebody else is talking about if you're hearing them present some ideas. Make it yours. Now, most of the things we talked about today on faith and focus and follow through, you already knew these things at a really young age, right? And I go back to the green bean fields back at the age of 9, And I think, were these principles present back then? And they were. They were. I mean, you talk about faith and vision. What was the vision of a 9-year-old in a green bean field? I want a better opportunity. And what was that opportunity? Well, the goal, the focus was, Mom and Dad said, you know what? If you want to go off to college, you're going to have to work and make some money to help pay for that. So if the vision was for a better life, I needed to work and I needed to make some money. And so what was the follow-through? Show up. Show up and get working. Right? So you all have, so I know you aren't all blessed to grow up as green bean pickers to learn these life lessons, so there's still hope for you. You knew these principles at a young age. Your parents instilled, or grandparents instilled this in you, right? We just need to stop and slow down and focus in on that as grown adults here. So, in summary, you need to connect with your faith and your vision. You need to lay out your focus, what the goals are going to be, and then come up with an action plan and make sure that you create an environment around you to give you the best chances to being successful in that space. I'm going to end with a little poem here called "The Station." The Station was written by a gentleman by the name of Robert J. Hastings, and here's what it says. Tucked away in our subconscious mind is an idyllic vision. We see ourselves on a long trip that spans the continent. We're traveling by train. Out of the windows, we drink in the passing scenes of cars as nearby highways, of children waving at a crossing, of cattle grazing on a distant hillside, of row upon row of corn and wheat, flatlands, valleys, mountains, rolling hillsides, city skylines and village halls. But uppermost in our mind is the final destination. On a certain day, at a certain hour, we'll pull into the station. Bands will be playing. Flags will be waving. Once we get there, so many wonderful dreams will come true, and the pieces of our lives will fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. We restlessly pace the aisles, damning the minutes for loitering, waiting for that station. When we reach the station, that'll be it. We'll